It's expensive to run that desalination plant. What that points to is that I think that we're heading for this collision course where buyback will be what happens unless the people that get elected to the House of Representatives in the balance of power and deciding who forms government, and in the Senate, because that is the parliamentary body that will decide the legislation that runs the plan, unless they are people that can find some other approach.
On the Flow Morning Show, we look at one of the really important discussion topics for this federal election. This is the election that will decide members that will then decide the future of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. For the current one finishes in 2024, and it's become a question we've asked some of those that are standing in both seats and also at Senate level. And Rikki Lambert, there are two different perspectives on this. Some say the current plan in its way of delivering water, 450 gig down to South Australia for the environmental flows, that is doomed.
Well, we are on a collision course on this between South Australia and the upstream states, and these are some recent comments from the most recent interviews we've done, but they really do, for me, summarise the perspectives on the Murray. For instance, I spoke with Independent Senator Rex Patrick, seeking to be re-elected to the Senate for South Australia. He's also up against Nick Xenophon, his old mentor, by the way, so either one of those could make it through and be a thorn in the side of the upstream states. Remembering Nick Xenophon was the architect of the buyback policy during the stimulus package coming out of the GFC. So this is what Rex Patrick had to say, which kind of sums up the South Australian position on the 450 gigalitres.
So failure to deliver on those 450 gigalitres is a breach of promise to all South Australians. Now, one of the problems we've got is that there is no penalty in the plan if the 450 gigalitres doesn't get delivered. Right now, on the record, where the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder has water from the 450, only 2 gigalitres has been delivered in the last 9 years, and we've got sort of less than 2 years to go. I've been putting as much pressure as I can on the government. Unfortunately, you can have the Liberal government saying, we support the plan in full. You can have the Labor government saying, we support the plan in full. That doesn't mean they actually have a plan to implement. My view is if they fail to deliver under the plan, then the government should go upstream and find willing sellers and buy water.
Interesting comments from Rex, but on the other side, Sophie Baldwin is the candidate taking on Anne Webster in the seat of Mallee. She's also the CEO of the Riverina Irrigators, so she has a very real understanding of the implications of water in the southern part of New South Wales, in that part, but also if she's standing in the seat of Mallee, which does take in the Sunraysia, her perspective is worth listening to also.
Yeah, no, it actually can't be delivered, Rikki. You look at the volumes that are travelling down the river now and up sort of around my area, particularly around Kundarook and places like that. They've lost 7 metres of the river bank over the last decade. So, you know, the Barmer Choke has lost 25% of its capacity in the last 10 years.
She's the former chair of that Southern Riverina Irrigators, but also Anne Webster we're speaking with shortly too. And all of those interviews you can look at, listen to on the Flow News 24 podcast. Just search Flow News 24 on your favourite podcast app. But the coalition position here is basically the 450 cannot be delivered unless it meets what they call the triple bottom line of no negative social, economic or environmental effects in the basin. Whereas the Labor position, and Mr Albanese may well be Prime Minister, is to say that 450 gigalitres must be delivered. And as Rex Patrick said, if it can't be delivered through water recovery projects, which is the coalition's preference, it has to be done via buybacks, which will be in 2024.
So by the time we get a new plan, and this government would decide that plan surely in sometime in 2024, the government that is elected, that is, and the opposition and those people that are in, say, the crossbenchers in the Senate could well be deciding on a new Murray-Darling Basin Plan. Does it include a stronger position for Adelaide to go to desalination, or could it include that in the future?
Well, it's entirely possible, and in the broader interview with Rex Patrick, he basically poo-pooed that suggestion because it's expensive to run that desalination plant. What that points to is that I think that we're heading for this collision course where buyback will be what happens unless the people that get elected to the House of Representatives in the balance of power and deciding who forms government, and in the Senate, because that is the parliamentary body that will decide the legislation that runs the plan, unless they are people that can find some other approach.
All right, for Rex Patrick, maybe the cost of the energy to desal is the query. Nuclear energy could be an answer there, or perhaps if he says that we've got plenty of solar and wind, maybe more solar panels on the face of Mount Lofty, or perhaps wind turbines that are turning around across the Mount Lofty range could provide for it.
Yeah, the Adelaide people, I think, would feel wonderful about themselves doing their part for the Murray-Darling Basin Plan if they had wind turbines spinning on top of Mount Lofty and overlooking them all, saying we're doing our part for the River Murray. I don't think that's going to happen, but it would certainly drive people to live in regional South Australia.
I think it will, and it may drive a more consensus approach to the Murray-Darling Basin Plan as we look at that. It will be decided in this term, so it's really important across the seats in New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia, seats like Farrer, Mallee and Barker, who you are voting for.